What could possibly be alarming about a man reading by the pool? And why does his calm gaze send an entire upscale community into disarray? His name is Lamar Clark. Dressed in a plain white t-shirt and simple navy swim shorts, with a copy of Leadership in Crisis in hand, he looks like any man enjoying a quiet afternoon. Then Karen Williams appears, clutching her clipboard like a formal indictment, her designer dress fluttering dramatically in the breeze, emphasizing both her entitled posture and the disdain in her eyes for someone she clearly believes doesn't belong. Walking beside her is Brad, a tall, rigid security guard who clings to protocol like a lifeline, adjusting his shoulder radio while throwing Lamar a look thick with suspicion. They march directly up to him without so much as a greeting or pause, and in a tone devoid of warmth, they declare that this area is reserved for residents of the high-rising, those who can truly afford to enjoy such an exclusive pool. Lamar doesn't get angry. He simply smiles. Softly, calmly, as if he's seen this scene unfold 100 times before. What happens next will upend the entire community. Are you ready? Lamar rises slowly from his chair, folding the corner of page 47 with deliberate care. His movements are measured, unhurried. The kind of controlled grace that comes from years of boardroom negotiations and high-stakes decisions. He places the book precisely on the small side table, spine aligned with the edge. "Excuse me," he says, his voice carrying the mild confusion of someone genuinely puzzled. "Is there some kind of problem?" The woman with the clipboard stops 3 feet away, her blue eyes scanning Lamar from head to toe with undisguised suspicion. Karen Williams, as her community board badge proudly declares, plants herself firmly on the Italian marble deck. At 50, she carries herself with the self-appointed authority of someone who has never been told no by a homeowners association. "I'm Karen Williams, head of the Community Standards Committee," she announces, tapping her pen against the clipboard. "I've been a resident here for 3 years, and I've never seen you before. Do you have a member card?" Behind her, Brad Chen adjusts his security cap and steps forward. At 35, he's built like someone who takes his gym membership seriously, but his nervous energy suggests he's more comfortable checking parking violations than confronting potential trespassers. His hand hovers near the radio on his belt. "Ma'am's right," Brad chimes in, his voice carrying the practiced authority of mall security. "This area is restricted to residents and their registered guests only. I'm going to need to see some identification." Lamar tilts his head slightly, still maintaining that same calm demeanor. "I live here," he says simply, his tone neither defensive nor aggressive, just matter of fact. Karen's laugh is sharp, cutting. "Live here? Where exactly? The townhomes on the other side of the complex?" Her eyes narrow as she takes in his casual attire, the absence of any visible designer labels or luxury accessories. "Because this pool is exclusively for the high-rise residents. The people who can actually afford the premium amenities." A small crowd begins to gather at the pool's periphery. Mrs. Chen from the 14th floor peers over her romance novel. The Martinez family pauses their approach to the kiddie pool. Even the maintenance staff near the equipment shed turn to watch the unfolding drama. Brad pulls out his smartphone, fingers flying across the screen. "I'm checking our resident registry now. No unauthorized pool usage allowed. It's in the community bylaws." He looks up from his device, shaking his head. "Sorry, sir, but there's no record of any pool reservation under Clark today." "Pool reservation?" Lamar asks, his eyebrows rising slightly. It's the first hint of genuine surprise he's shown. "New policy," Karen says smugly, making a note on her clipboard. "Implemented last month to prevent overcrowding. All residents must register their pool usage 24 hours in advance. It's clearly posted on the community app and the lobby bulletin board." Lamar nods slowly, processing this information. His fingers drum once against his thigh, a subtle gesture that might be impatience or something else entirely. Around the pool, conversations have dropped to whispers, but the attention remains focused squarely on the developing confrontation. "I see," Lamar says finally. "Well, I appreciate you both taking your responsibilities seriously. Community standards are important." He pauses, letting his gaze sweep across the gathering crowd before returning to Karen's expectant face. "I was hoping to swim a few laps before dinner. Is there perhaps some kind of exception process?" The question hangs in the air like a challenge neither Karen nor Brad seems prepared to handle. Karen's clipboard rises like a shield between herself and Lamar, her manicured fingernails tapping an impatient rhythm against the plastic surface. "Exception process?" she repeats, her voice climbing half an octave. "Sir, the rules exist for everyone. We can't just make exceptions because someone decides to show up unannounced. Especially," she continues, her gaze once again traveling the length of Lamar's frame, "when certain people seem to think they can just walk into places they don't belong. This is a high-end community with specific standards." Brad's radio crackles to life and he speaks into it with newfound confidence. "Control, this is Unit 7 at the pool deck. We have a possible trespassing situation. Individual claims to be a resident but has no registration on file." The static-filled response carries across the pool area. "Copy that, 7. Need backup?" "Negative for now," Brad replies, his chest puffing slightly. Situation appears manageable. Lamar remains perfectly still during this exchange, but his dark eyes track every movement, every gesture. When a mother hurries her two young children away from the pool's edge, whispering urgently about stranger danger, something flickers across his features. Not anger, but a deep, weary recognition. "I understand there are policies," Lamar says, his voice still level. "Could you tell me exactly which section of the community bylaws requires advance registration for pool usage?" Karen's pen stops tapping. For a moment, she looks uncertain, flipping through the pages on her clipboard. "Well, it's clearly stated in the recent updates. Isn't it, Brad?" Brad scrolls through his phone again, frowning. "I mean, there's something about guest policies and... Hang on." His confidence wavers as he apparently fails to find the specific regulation. "You know what?" Karen snaps, abandoning her search. "The specifics don't matter. What matters is that you're disrupting our community pool experience. Look around. You're making families uncomfortable. Indeed, the pool deck has transformed into something resembling a crime scene. Conversations have died away entirely. Children peer from behind their parents' legs. Even the elderly man doing his afternoon laps has stopped mid-stroke to tread water and watch. Lamar slowly reaches into his swim bag, extracting his smartphone. Karen and Brad both tense, but he simply scrolls through his contacts and makes a call. "Hi, Sarah," he says into the phone, his voice carrying clearly across the suddenly quiet space. "I'm going to need you to look up something for me, community pool policies specifically regarding registration requirements." He pauses, listening. "Yes, I can hold. Who are you calling?" Karen demands, suspicion creeping into her voice. "Someone who can help clarify the policies," Lamar replies calmly. Brad steps closer, his hand now resting on his radio. "Sir, if you're trying to create some kind of distraction or delay tactic, I should warn you that we take security violations very seriously here." "Security violations?" Lamar asks, genuine curiosity in his tone. "For trying to use a pool?" "For trespassing," Karen corrects sharply. "For refusing to comply with community standards. For disrupting the peaceful enjoyment of our residents." As if summoned by her words, Mrs. Patterson from the 17th floor approaches their group. She's a thin woman in her 60s, known throughout the building for her involvement in every committee and her uncanny ability to appear wherever drama unfolds. "Is everything all right, Karen?" Mrs. Patterson asks, her voice dripping with concern. "I heard there was some kind of incident." "Just handling a trespassing situation," Karen replies, her authority restored by the presence of an audience. "Nothing we can't manage." Mrs. Patterson's gaze settles on Lamar with the intensity of a hawk spotting prey. "I don't believe I know you, young man. Which unit are you visiting?" Lamar ends his phone call and slides the device back into his bag. When he looks up, there's something different in his expression. Not anger, exactly, but a cold certainty that wasn't there before. "I'm not visiting," he says quietly. "I live here." The simple statement lands like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples of murmured conversation through the gathered crowd. Karen's grip tightens on her clipboard, and Brad's hand moves to his radio once more. "We'll see about that," Karen mutters, her voice carrying a promise that sounds almost like a threat. The crowd around the pool has swollen to nearly 20 people now, drawn by the whispered promises of drama that seem to spread through luxury communities like wildfire. Karen Williams stands at the center of it all, her clipboard raised high enough for everyone to see, her voice carrying the righteous authority of someone who believes absolutely in their own moral superiority. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announces, projecting her voice across the pool deck with theatrical flair. "We have an individual here who is refusing to follow our community guidelines, someone who thinks the rules simply don't apply to him." A murmur ripples through the assembled residents. Lamar remains seated on the edge of his lounge chair, hands clasped loosely in front of him, watching the performance with the detached interest of someone observing a particularly fascinating social experiment. Karen turns back to him, her eyes bright with the kind of zealous energy that comes from having an audience. "Now, sir, I'm going to ask you one more time. Do you have proper authorization to be using this pool facility?" "As I mentioned," Lamar says calmly, "I live here." "Where?" The question comes from Robert Sterling, who has just arrived on the scene. At 55, Sterling carries himself with the kind of casual arrogance that comes from old money and newer politics. His BMW X7 sits in the visitors' parking with its hazard lights blinking, as if community drama is just another stop on his busy schedule of self-importance. Sterling approaches with the measured stride of someone accustomed to having rooms fall silent when he enters. His navy suit probably costs more than most people's monthly rent, and he knows it. "I'm Robert Sterling, chairman of the Homeowners Association. I've lived in this community for 5 years, and I know every resident in this building. I've never seen you before." Karen beams at the reinforcement. "Thank you, Robert. I was just explaining to this gentleman that we have policies for a reason. Policies that seem to be applied rather selectively," Lamar observes quietly. The comment draws sharp looks from both Karen and Robert. Sterling's jaw tightens. "What exactly are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything," Lamar replies. "I'm simply noting that in the 20 minutes I've been sitting here, I've watched a dozen people use this pool. None of them were asked for identification or proof of registration." Brad shifts uncomfortably, his radio crackling with static. "Sir, that's different. Those are known residents." "Known how?" Lamar asks. "Did you check their faces against a database? Verify their unit numbers? Or did you simply assume they belonged because they looked like they belonged?" The question hangs in the air like smoke, visible to everyone but impossible to clear away. Several residents in the crowd exchange uncomfortable glances. The Martinez family, still hovering at the pool's edge with their young children, begins to quietly gather their belongings. Karen's face flushes red. "That's completely different, and you know it. Those people are established members of our community. They've contributed to our property values, our community standards. They understand what it means to be part of something exclusive." "And what exactly do I not understand?" Lamar asks. Robert steps forward, his voice dropping to what he probably thinks is a menacing whisper but carries clearly across the water. "You want to know what you don't understand? You don't understand that this is a $50 million private facility. You don't understand that people here have worked their entire lives to afford this level of luxury. You don't understand that when you try to sneak into places, you don't belong. You're stealing from people who've earned their place here." The words hit like physical blows. Around the pool, residents shift nervously. Some nod in agreement. Others look away, suddenly finding their phones or their books intensely interesting. Karen pulls out her phone, opening the camera app. You know what? I think our community Facebook page needs to know about this. Residents have a right to know when security issues arise. She begins filming, her voice taking on the performative quality of someone accustomed to social media drama. This is Karen Williams reporting a trespassing incident at our beautiful Ocean View community pool. Despite repeated requests to provide proper identification, this individual continues to refuse compliance with our established protocols. Ma'am, Brad interjects, though his voice lacks conviction. Maybe we should handle this through official channels first. Official channels? Robert laughs, the sound sharp and unpleasant. Brad, this man has had multiple opportunities to resolve this situation peacefully. He's chosen confrontation instead of cooperation. What does that tell you about his character? Lamar reaches for his phone, and immediately 3 people tense. Karen stops filming. Brad's hand moves to his radio, and Robert takes a half-step backward. Relax, Lamar says, his voice carrying the first hint of amusement they've heard. I'm just sending a text message. His fingers move quickly across the screen. Activate Protocol 7. Full documentation required. He sets the phone down on the small table beside his chair and looks up at the assembled crowd. When he speaks, his voice is quiet, but something in his tone makes everyone lean in to listen. I've been called many things in my life, he says, but I've never been called a thief. The silence that follows is thick enough to swim through. Even the children in the kiddie pool seem to sense the weight of the moment, their splashing reduced to whispers. Karen lowers her phone, suddenly uncertain. Robert's confident smile wavers at the edges. And Brad looks like a man who's beginning to suspect he might have made a very serious mistake. Lamar stands up slowly, brushing an invisible speck of dust from his swim shorts. I think, he says, it's time for some people to learn exactly who they're talking to. The tension around the pool ratchets higher as Robert Sterling's assistant, Jessica, arrives with a leather portfolio tucked under her arm and the kind of urgency that suggests someone's afternoon is about to be ruined. At 32, Jessica moves with the efficient precision of someone who makes her living solving other people's problems. But today she looks like she's walking into one she can't fix. Mr. Sterling, she says, slightly breathless from what must have been a sprint from the parking garage. I came as soon as I got your message about the security situation. Robert nods approvingly, clearly relishing the opportunity to demonstrate his influence. Jessica, meet our trespasser. Perhaps you can help explain to him what kind of legal consequences he's facing. Jessica glances at Lamar, then at the growing crowd, then back at her employer with obvious confusion. Sir, what exactly would you like me to explain? Trespassing charges for starters, Karen interjects, waving her phone like evidence. Disturbing the peace, probably fraud, since he's claiming to be a resident when he clearly isn't. The crowd has grown again, now including nearly 30 residents and staff members. Word has spread through the building's group chat, drawing people from their apartments like viewers to a car accident. Some film with their phones. Others whisper among themselves, crafting the narrative that will spread through their social circles like wildfire. Lamar remains perfectly still throughout this exchange, but his eyes move constantly, cataloging faces, recording conversations, filing away details with the systematic precision of someone accustomed to processing vast amounts of information quickly. Let me ask you something, Robert says, stepping closer to Lamar with the kind of aggressive confidence that comes from believing you're untouchable. What's your annual income? The question draws gasps from several onlookers. Even in a community where money talks loudly, this level of direct financial interrogation crosses lines that most people recognize. Excuse me, Lamar says, his eyebrows rising slightly. You heard me. If you claim to live here, you should be able to afford the monthly homeowners association fees. $2,800 per month, plus utilities, plus the special assessments we vote on quarterly. Can you afford that? Karen jumps in eagerly, sensing blood in the water. And that's just the basics. The pool maintenance fee alone is $400 per unit per month. The concierge service, the fitness center, the private security. We're talking about a lifestyle that requires serious financial commitment. The kind of commitment, Robert continues, that people like you typically can't make. The phrase hangs in the air like a poison cloud. Several residents shift uncomfortably. A few begin to quietly excuse themselves, suddenly remembering urgent appointments elsewhere. But others lean in closer, drawn by the ugly magnetism of public humiliation. Lamar takes out his phone again, this time placing a call that everyone can hear. "David," he says into the device, his voice carrying clearly across the water. "I need you to pull the financial records for Ocean View luxury residences. Specifically, I want to know about any recent policy changes regarding pool usage and the legal authority behind them." He pauses, listening, while 40 sets of eyes watch his every expression. "Also," he continues, "please review our diversity and inclusion policies regarding community harassment. I believe we may have a situation that requires immediate attention." Robert's confident smile flickers. "Who exactly do you think you're calling? Your lawyer isn't going to help with trespassing charges." "Not my lawyer," Lamar says calmly, ending the call. "My chief financial officer." The statement lands like a bomb in the middle of the crowd. Conversations stop mid-sentence. Karen's clipboard slips from suddenly nerveless fingers and clatters on the marble deck. "Your what?" Jessica asks, her portfolio falling open to scatter papers across the ground. But Lamar is already placing another call. "Sarah, this is Lamar. I need you to contact building management immediately. We have a harassment situation at the pool that requires documentation." He glances around the crowd. "Also, please notify legal that we may need to review the management company's contract. There seem to be some training gaps that need addressing." Rad's radio crackles urgently. "Unit 7, what's your status?" Brad starts, then stops, staring at Lamar with growing horror. "Control, I think we might have a situation here." "What kind of situation?" Brad looks around desperately, as if hoping someone else will answer for him. "I'm not sure. Can you check the resident database for a Lamar Clark?" The radio goes silent for a long moment. Then, "Unit 7, please confirm. You said Lamar Clark?" "That's correct." Another pause, longer this time. "Unit 7, Mr. Clark is listed as—" Oh, shit. The expletive carries clearly across the pool deck, drawing shocked gasps from the assembled crowd. Professional security personnel don't usually curse over open radio channels, especially not in front of building residents. Karen fumbles for her phone, fingers shaking as she opens Google. Clark, she mutters, typing rapidly. Her face goes through a remarkable transformation. Confusion, surprise, disbelief, and finally the kind of pale terror that comes from realizing you've just made an enormous mistake. "Oh my God," she whispers, her voice barely audible. "Clark Industries." The name spreads through the crowd like wildfire. Phones emerge from pockets and purses as residents begin their own frantic searches. The results are apparently unanimous, judging by the series of sharp intakes of breath and muttered exclamations. Robert Sterling, who has spent the last 30 minutes demonstrating his authority and influence, suddenly looks like a man who has just discovered he's been lecturing the owner of the building while standing in the owner's living room. Jessica's portfolio lies forgotten on the ground, its contents scattered by the afternoon breeze, while she stares at Lamar with the expression of someone watching their career prospects crumble in real time. And Lamar Clark, CEO of Clark Industries, Fortune 500 company owner, and the man who personally financed the construction of this entire luxury community, sits quietly in his swim shorts, watching 30-plus people realize simultaneously that they have just participated in the public humiliation of one of the most powerful men in the city. His phone buzzes with a text message. He glances at the screen and nods, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Well," he says, his voice cutting through the stunned silence like a blade. "I think it's time we all had a conversation about community standards. The transformation is instant and absolute. One moment Lamar Clark is a trespasser in swim shorts, facing down an angry mob. The next, he's the center of a very different kind of attention. The kind that comes when people suddenly realize they've been barking orders at the person who signs their paychecks." His phone rings, the sound cutting through the stunned silence like a fire alarm. Lamar answers on speaker, his voice calm and professional. "Clark Industries, this is Lamar." "Mr. Clark," comes a crisp female voice that carries the authority of someone accustomed to handling crises. "This is Jennifer Walsh, your executive assistant. I have David Chen from Legal on Conference, along with Michael Rodriguez from Community Relations. We understand there's been an incident at the Ocean View property. The crowd around the pool has gone dead silent. Even the children in the kiddie pool seem to sense that something monumental is happening. Their splashing reduced to nervous whispers." "That's correct, Jennifer," Lamar says, his eyes sweeping across the assembled faces. "We have what appears to be a systematic harassment issue involving building management and several residents." "Sir," David Chen's voice crackles through the speaker, "we've reviewed the security footage from the past hour. The legal implications are significant." Robert Sterling's face has gone the color of old concrete. His mouth opens and closes soundlessly, like a fish gasping for air. Jessica has abandoned any pretense of professional composure and is simply staring at Lamar with the expression of someone watching their world collapse in slow motion. Karen Williams looks like she's about to be sick. Her phone dangles forgotten in her hand, the screen still displaying the Google search results that have apparently confirmed her worst fears. Lamar Clark, CEO, Clark Industries, net worth $2.8 billion, philanthropist, community development pioneer. Lamar reaches into his swim bag and withdraws a thin leather wallet. From it, he extracts a gold-embossed card and places it carefully on the pool table where everyone can see it. The card reads, "Ocean View Luxury Residences, Founding Member, Owners Circle, Lamar Clark, Penthouse A." "I moved into the penthouse 3 years ago," Lamar says conversationally, as if discussing the weather. "Before that, I lived in the construction trailer on this site for 18 months, overseeing every detail of the building process. I wanted to make sure we got it right." Brad, the security guard, looks like he wants to disappear into the marble deck. His radio has been broadcasting a steady stream of increasingly frantic communications from the control room, but he seems unable to respond to any of them. "The pool," Lamar continues, tapping the glass surface of his phone to display architectural plans, "was actually my personal addition to the original design. The initial blueprints called for a much smaller facility, but I felt the community deserved something special. The renovation cost was $2.3 million. He scrolls through the plans with casual familiarity, highlighting different sections as he speaks. "The Italian marble deck, the infinity edge system, the integrated spa, all my specifications. I wanted this to be a place where families could create memories, where neighbors could build relationships, where everyone could feel welcome." The irony of that last statement hangs heavy in the afternoon air. Jennifer Walsh's voice continues through the speaker. "Sir, we have representatives from the mayor's office requesting a statement. Apparently this incident has already been posted to social media, and they're concerned about the city's relationship with Clark Industries." Lamar glances at Karen, who flinches as if he'd struck her. "Karen, I believe you were live streaming this conversation?" She nods mutely, her Facebook Live still running to an audience that has grown to over 800 viewers and is climbing rapidly. "Good," Lamar says. "Transparency is important. Jennifer, please coordinate with our PR team. I want a full statement released within the hour." Of course, sir. Also, the building management company has requested an emergency meeting. They seem to understand that their contract may be in jeopardy. They should be concerned, Lamar replies. When security protocols are applied discriminatorily, when residents are harassed based on appearance rather than behavior, when community standards become weapons for prejudice, yes, contracts should be reviewed. Robert Sterling finally finds his voice, though it comes out as barely more than a whisper. Mr. Clark, we had no idea. If we had known who you were. Lamar turns to face him directly, and for the first time, there's real steel in his expression. Mr. Sterling, do you understand what you just said? Robert looks confused, then horrified as the implication sinks in. I didn't mean... That's not what You meant that if you had known I was wealthy and powerful, you would have treated me with respect. Which implies that you believe respect is something that should be earned through status rather than granted through basic human decency. The crowd has grown again, but now it's a very different kind of gathering. Building management personnel have arrived, looking as though they're attending their own funeral. Several residents who had earlier watched with amusement or approval now seem to be studying their shoes with intense fascination. Lamar's phone buzzes with another call. Excuse me, he says, answering. Lamar Clark. Sir, this is Chief Patterson with City Police. We've received multiple calls about a disturbance at your property. Is everything under control? Everything's fine, Chief. Just a community education opportunity. No police response needed. Copy that, sir. We'll mark it resolved. Have a good afternoon. As Lamar ends the call, he notices that several people in the crowd are quietly trying to edge away from the pool area, but his voice stops them. Lamo. A scooter, lift. Please don't leave, he says, his tone carrying the kind of quiet authority that comes from years of commanding boardrooms full of powerful people. I think we all have something to learn from this experience. He stands up slowly, his casual swim attire somehow transformed into a symbol of just how wrong everyone's assumptions had been. When he speaks again, his voice carries across the water with perfect clarity. For the record, I didn't reveal my identity to prove that I belong here. I revealed it to demonstrate just how toxic your assumptions about who belongs where really are. The silence that follows is broken only by the gentle lapping of water against the pool's infinity edge and the distant hum of traffic from the city below. Now, Lamar says, let's talk about what happens next. The reckoning begins with a phone call that Robert Sterling receives while still standing frozen at the pool's edge. His ringtone, a pompous classical piece that probably cost more than most people's phones, cuts through the tense silence like a warning bell. Sterling Industries, this is Robert, he answers, his voice shaky but attempting to maintain some semblance of professional composure. The conversation that follows is visible to everyone present, played out in Sterling's increasingly pale complexion and the way his free hand begins to tremble slightly. What do you mean, terminated? He says into the phone. All of them? But we've had those contracts for... Yes, I understand it's effective immediately, but surely we can discuss... He looked up to find Lamar watching him with mild interest, as if observing a particularly predictable laboratory experiment. Clark Industries, Sterling whispers, the phone still pressed to his ear. They're canceling everything. $2.8 million in annual contracts. My biggest client. His voice rises to a near whine. How was I supposed to know he was... Lamar raises a hand and Sterling's mouth snaps shut like a trap. The contracts weren't cancelled because of who I am, Lamar says calmly. They were cancelled because of who you revealed yourself to be. Clark Industries has a zero-tolerance policy for discriminatory behavior from our contractors and partners. It's clearly stated in every agreement we sign. Karen Williams, meanwhile, has discovered that her Facebook livestream has become a viral phenomenon for all the wrong reasons. Her phone screen shows a steady stream of comments, none of them supportive. "Oh God," she moans, scrolling through the responses. "They're sharing it everywhere. It's been viewed 20,000 times in the last 10 minutes. The comments visible on her screen are brutal. "This is what racism looks like in 2025. Imagine harassing a black CEO for using his own pool. Karen Williams just destroyed her own life on livestream. Her community board position, which she had wielded like a weapon just an hour earlier, evaporates with a series of text messages from other board members. Each notification brings another resignation from joint committees, another withdrawal of support, another bridge burned in the small, interconnected world of luxury community politics. The Homeowners Association will be voting on new leadership next week," one message reads. "Your resignation would be appreciated before then." Jessica, Robert's assistant, receives her own devastating phone call. Her employment with Sterling Industries ends with a terse conversation about liability concerns and image problems. The portfolio that had scattered across the pool deck when she dropped it now seems prophetic. Her career prospects scattered just as thoroughly, but it's Brad, the security guard, who faces the most immediate consequences. His radio crackles to life with a call from his supervisor that everyone can hear. "Chen, what the hell is going on over there?" "Sir, there's been a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" "We've had calls from the mayor's office, the police chief, and the head of Clark Industries' legal department. You want to explain to me how checking a pool pass turned into a federal incident?" Lamar watches this unfold with the detached interest of someone who has seen this particular play performed many times before. When Brad's supervisor informs him that he's suspended pending a full investigation, Lamar finally speaks up. "If I may," he says, his voice carrying clearly across the radio channel. "This is Lamar Clark. I'd like to speak with your head of security, please." There's a moment of dead air. Then, "Mr. Clark? Sir, this is Captain Morris. I apologize profusely for this incident. Brad will be terminated immediately and will conduct a full review of all our protocols." "Captain Morris, I don't want Brad fired," Lamar says, causing a collective intake of breath from the crowd. "I want him retrained. I want your entire team retrained. And I want a detailed report on how this situation was allowed to develop." The radio crackles with surprised acknowledgement, and Lamar turns his attention back to the assembled crowd. The social media avalanche continues to build momentum. Local news stations have picked up the story from Karen's viral livestream. The phrase "pool incident at Ocean View" is trending on multiple platforms, accompanied by increasingly unflattering analysis of the behavior displayed by the community members involved. Robert Sterling's business, built over decades of careful networking and political connections, crumbles with stunning speed. By the time the sun begins to set behind the luxury towers, 3 more of his major clients have called to terminate their relationships. His wife, reached by reporters, issues a statement through her attorney declaring her deep embarrassment and commitment to making amends. Karen Williams watches her social media presence transform from community leader to cautionary tale in real time. The video of her confronting Lamar has been edited, analyzed, and shared across every platform, usually accompanied by commentary about privilege, assumptions, and the consequences of public racism. "I'm getting death threats," she whispers to no one in particular, staring at her phone screen. "People are posting my address, my husband's business information, my children's school." Lamar overhears this and shakes his head. "That's not justice," he says firmly. "That's mob mentality, and it's not what I wanted." He pulls out his phone and places another call. "Jennifer, I need our PR team to release a statement discouraging any harassment or threats directed at the individuals involved in today's incident. What happened here was wrong, but vigilante justice isn't the answer." The call ends, and he addresses the remaining crowd directly. "This isn't about revenge," he says. "It's about consequences, natural, proportional consequences for choices freely made. As the afternoon draws to a close, the pool deck that had been the scene of such ugly confrontation begins to empty. Some residents slink away in embarrassed silence. Others approach Lamar with halting apologies and promises to do better in the future. The marble deck, still warm from the afternoon sun, bears witness to the scattered debris of reputations destroyed not by outside forces or bad luck, but by the simple act of revealing who people really are when they think no one important is watching. Lamar remains by the pool as the crowd disperses, his book still lying open to page 47, waiting for him to finish the chapter he'd started hours earlier, in what feels like a different world. The sun has begun its descent toward the horizon, painting the pool deck in golden hues that transform the scene from one of conflict to something approaching peace. Lamar Clark sits on the same lounge chair where this all began. But now, he's alone except for the gentle lapping of water and the distant hum of the city below. He picks up his book, Leadership in Crisis, and finds his place again. Page 47, where he'd left off before Karen Williams changed the trajectory of several lives with a simple assumption about who belonged where. "You know," he says, speaking to no one in particular, his voice carrying across the empty deck, "I've experienced discrimination my entire life. In elementary school, when teachers assumed I wasn't smart enough for advanced classes. In college, when study groups formed around me rather than including me. In my early career, when clients requested to speak with someone more senior after meeting me." He closes the book, using his finger to mark the page, and gazes out at the city skyline that his company has helped shape over the past decade. But this was different. This wasn't about proving my intelligence or demonstrating my competence. This was about being denied basic human dignity in a place I helped create. Surrounded by amenities I personally funded, attacked by people who benefited from my investments without ever knowing it. A gentle breeze stirs the water, creating ripples that catch and scatter the afternoon light. Lamar watches the patterns for a moment before continuing. The easiest thing would have been to reveal my identity immediately, to pull out my phone, call building management, and watch everyone scramble to apologize. But that would have solved nothing. It would have taught nothing. It would have been about power, not justice. He stands up, walking to the pool's infinity edge where the water seems to blend seamlessly with the sky beyond. Real change doesn't happen when people treat you well because they discover you're wealthy or powerful. Real change happens when they understand that every person deserves respect regardless of status, appearance, or assumptions about their background. Has Hitler had any sympathy with the loss? No smoking in... Lamar turns back toward the chairs where, just hours earlier, 30-plus people had gathered to watch what they thought was the public humiliation of a trespasser. Karen Williams didn't need to lose her position because she confronted someone she didn't recognize. She lost it because she approached that confrontation with prejudice and malice. Robert Sterling didn't lose his contracts because he asked questions. He lost them because his questions revealed a character incompatible with our company values. The marble deck, still warm from the day's sun, seems to hold echoes of the afternoon's events. But Lamar's voice carries only reflection, not anger. I've spent my career building things: companies, buildings, communities, opportunities. What I learned today is that building a structure isn't enough. You have to actively build the culture that fills it. You have to constantly reinforce the values that make a community truly inclusive. He retrieves his phone and scrolls through the dozens of messages that have accumulated over the past few hours. Reporters requesting interviews, community leaders offering apologies, business partners expressing support, friends checking on his well-being. The hardest part, he admits, wasn't being confronted or questioned or even insulted. The hardest part was watching how quickly a crowd formed, how readily people joined in without knowing the facts, how comfortable everyone seemed with public humiliation as entertainment. In the later years, Lamar deletes several messages without reading them, focusing instead on a note from his daughter at college. "Dad, saw the video. Are you okay? Love you." He types back, "I'm fine, sweetheart. Important lesson learned today. Call you tonight." This experience reminded me why Clark Industries invests so heavily in diversity training, community outreach, and inclusive hiring practices. It's not about checking boxes or avoiding lawsuits. It's about creating environments where human dignity is the default assumption, not a privilege to be earned. The pool deck has returned to its intended purpose now, a peaceful space for reflection and relaxation. But Lamar knows that what happened here today will ripple outward in ways both seen and unseen. "Change is uncomfortable," he says, settling back into his chair and opening his book again. "Growth requires us to confront our biases, acknowledge our mistakes, and commit to doing better." That's true for individuals, and it's true for communities. He finds page 47 again, but before beginning to read, he looks up one more time at the cameras that recorded everything. The infinity pool that reflected so many ugly truths. The luxury amenities that couldn't purchase basic human decency. "I hope," he says quietly, "that the people who participated in today's events take some time to reflect on who they want to be, not just when they think someone important is watching, but every day, in every interaction, with every person they meet." The book opens to the chapter he'd been reading, Leading Through Adversity, When Crisis Reveals Character. Lamar smiles slightly at the irony and begins to read, finally able to enjoy the 30 minutes of peace he'd originally come here to find. The story of what happened at the Ocean View pool that afternoon doesn't end with Lamar Clark returning to his book and the crowd dispersing into the golden evening light. It continues in every conversation sparked by the viral video, every moment of recognition when someone sees their own biases reflected in Karen Williams' assumptions, every decision made by viewers who witnessed this real-time lesson in the consequences of prejudice. So here's the question that matters. What would you do? Not if you were Lamar, wealthy, powerful, protected by lawyers and public relations teams. What would you do if you were the person sitting by the pool when Karen Williams approached that man in swim shorts? Would you speak up when you heard the assumptions in her voice? Would you intervene when the crowd began to form? Would you be the voice that said, "Wait, let's think about this differently"? Because this isn't really a story about a billionaire CEO getting revenge on racist neighbors. This is a story about how quickly ordinary people can become complicit in cruelty when they convince themselves someone else deserves it. Every day, in coffee shops and stores, in schools and workplaces, in neighborhoods and online spaces, people face the kind of assumptions that nearly destroyed reputations at that pool. The difference is that most of them don't have Lamar Clark's resources to fight back. They depend on bystanders who are willing to become upstanders. Your voice matters more than you think. Your willingness to question group behavior, to challenge assumptions, to simply ask, "Are we being fair here?" can change outcomes. You have the power to be the person who stops the crowd from forming, who disrupts the narrative before it becomes harassment. Check your own biases. We all have them. The question isn't whether you have unconscious assumptions about people based on appearance, race, class, or other factors. The question is whether you're willing to examine those assumptions and challenge them when they arise. Use whatever privilege you have, economic, social, racial, educational, to lift others up, not to tear them down. When you see someone being treated unfairly, don't just record it for social media. Intervene. Be the voice that says, This isn't right. And remember, you never know who you're talking to. That ordinary person you're dismissing might be your boss's boss. That suspicious character you're calling security on might own the building. That quiet individual you're making assumptions about might be someone whose story would humble you if you took the time to listen. But here's the thing. It shouldn't matter who they are. Treat everyone with respect, not because of who they might be, but because of who you choose to be. Because in the end, dignity isn't negotiable, and justice isn't optional. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is simply recognize that every person you meet deserves the basic assumption of belonging until they prove otherwise through their actions, not their appearance. Be the change, be the voice, be the difference, because you never know when you might be the one sitting by the pool hoping someone will speak up for you.